So in my experience, the coaches in my life, they weren't necessarily using a model that you would call like human-centered. And it felt like their intention was really to place me into like a pathway or a trajectory, or just to place me to get a number, or a slot filled. My pathway and my journey was not at the forefront, a result of them trying to place me into, whether it was a job recommendation at DOES, they're saying apply to these jobs, but they're not thinking about like my career trajectory or what I would actually do best in.
Glad to have you all here because I know that you all work in various facets of workforce development. And so here we're in the National Capital area, and I know that many of you work with job placement, you work with job readiness, you work in digital literacy. And those are, when we look to some of the data, we see in this particular city, and these are some of the similar trends other places, that a bachelor's degree has been the great equalizer. Those people who have a bachelor's degree, they earn higher wages. They end up having access to better opportunities, which then in turn give them what some might call a quality of life. And then when we look at some of the data, we can look at neighborhoods where poverty is at an all-time high, and it's generational poverty. It's not poverty that started last night. It's happened for generations. And then when we think about, well, how do you get out of generational poverty? We're living in the digital era, and we think about education is now online. You can have an online degree, you can get your GED online, you can get your high school diploma online. You have to apply for jobs online. You have to conduct research for the types of jobs you want to go into, job searches. All of that stuff nowadays, it happens online. Even if you were to go into a community-based center, they're going to still sit you down at a computer. And so when we look at inequitable rates of like digital literacy, it just helps to layer some of the challenges that we face. And so I'm glad to have you all here today to talk about some of this, because although looking at data may look dismal and it may make some afraid to attack challenges, as the workforce evangelist, I believe that there are solutions. And I feel like we can get to those solutions if we would bring everyone to the table, those who need help and support, those who are doing that work, funders who want to fund that work. If we could bring everyone to the table, I think that we can have a collective impact on some of the challenges we face. And so based upon that, I want to kind of give you all an opportunity to talk a little bit about where do you see, based upon your work with the community, where do you see some of the bright spots that we could potentially elevate and take into the hall of lawmakers and policymakers?
So I'll go first. A lot of my work with the community has been in the coaching space, but in the last year, I have seen the community be such a great partner. And I think oftentimes there can be the white savior complex where someone is coming into a community and saying, I need to change you. There's something wrong with you and how you think and how you live. And in just being around you all and being in environments where there's workforce readiness, the partner element of the community being a resource to us has been such a bright spot. They come with so much background, so much experiences that I feel like fill in some of make our work less black and white and more color, and also lighten the load from us so that we don't have to be the only one identifying partners or identifying potential funders, but the people are on the ground. They are hearing, they are seeing. And so I think that's a bright spot of being able to partner with them more versus being seen as the helper, but just a partner and friend.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring out, that, the partnership is better. Like, we're not looking to be a savior. Like, we don't want to take credit for being the savior, but what we want to do is say, bring us to the table and let us offer what we can contribute. And then together, we'll have a solution. So I think that that's certainly, has anyone else had any experiences in the community working that they want to talk about?
Well, so as you alluded to, the bachelor's degree, we have an equalizer, right? And a lot of things you talk about had to do with digital literacy as well. And a bright spot for me is that that's also the equalizer. We talk about this concept in our community of college and career readiness. A lot of times there's much emphasis on the college, but less on a career. So some of the things you alluded to that we can get online include certifications, not just degrees, but certifications that allow residents and allow folks in the community to become economically mobile. It allows for greater economic mobility, allows it at a faster rate so that folks can attain a livable wage. So I think that is also, has been a bright spot and the work that I find I do with the community.
And even moving forward with that particular point of partners and the other community-based organizations as well, they come in many forms. Some of them are as broad as labor unions. There are many different types of labor unions out there within the metropolitan area, and as well can be grassroots community-based organizers that have people that live in the particular neighborhoods that they need the access, that lack the access, or just even don't even know that the access is out there. So finding those particular diamonds in the rough, or even particularly finding the people that are willing to help those that are in need, and providing them with resources, providing them with connections so that they can spread that particular resource throughout areas and communities that are in need of those opportunities.
You say find people who want to help. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to help. I want to help. I want to help. But we see some of the challenges as being ongoing, right? And some partnerships don't hold. But I really want to hear any experiences where, is this a real thing? Are people really taking the help where it really is needed? What's been your experience? Because I've seen situations where people handpick, or there's a selection process, and I believe in fit. I think we should make sure people fit what the support and services are. But I just feel like with all the help, sometimes we see in certain neighborhoods the impact doesn't go as deep as it needs to go. And so I'd love to hear some thoughts about that.
Well, this is hard work. When people say they want to help, that's a concept of, wanting to be helpful. But when you actually start to unpack what it takes to, quote unquote, help, or to work receive and start to do the work, you see that it's deeper than just helpful. There has to be a human-centered approach to this. There has to be an element of really getting at the heart of the matter of what is the issue with our citizens and some of our residents, some of the folks in the community. What is it that they really need? Yes, we can give them job force training, but is there any barriers? Are they facing personal barriers? Or do they have historical biases against how they've been treated at the times that they're trying to get help? And once we start to unpack those things, and so it's different layers to the work. So what I would say is that people do want to help. A lot of times we don't really understand what an undertaking that it is to actually help. And so when you mentioned hand picking, looking at someone who's all one play, but how do we meet folks where they are and bring them to where they need? So doing this work, we have to take into consideration what people feel that they want their legacy to be, where their interests are, what's the help that they need to actually persevere and move through and become economically mobile to earn a livable wage. So taking their hopes and dreams, their plans into account, I think is part of where the real work starts. And how do we build something? How do we become those bridge builders to build that connection from where they are to where they want to go?
I think that I heard you use the term human-centered. And just by a show of hands, whose career trajectory or any coaching or counseling you've had was human-centered? Has anybody experienced human-centered?
I mean, in the traditional sense, I'm a college graduate, so I went to school and I had an advisor that advised, but I'm not necessarily certain that it was human-centered. I think, and this is what I've noticed, there are underlying intentions of what types of degrees, what types of majors to pursue and programs. And so I don't know if I always had a say, but there was some guidance in a certain direction.
And same thing as well, being a college graduate, there, I can distinctly remember that there were different career paths available to only those that were completed political science, for example, law, things like that, that were very specific towards a specific career field. There were available resources that were human-centered that advisors that took into consideration so that they can say, oh, we have a partner that works for a government agency, that works for a particular law firm, examples like that. But when it comes to other areas of study, there weren't any advisors that were willing to have that human-centered connection. And so when it comes to along those lines, there just wasn't that human-centered connections that many people would expect to find, unless if you're part of a select few or a very narrow field.
So in my experience, the coaches in my life, they weren't necessarily using a model that you would call like human-centered. And it felt like their intention was really to place me into like a pathway or a trajectory, or just to place me to get a number, or a slot filled, versus thinking, my pathway and my journey was not at the forefront. That was just a result of them trying to place me into, whether it was a job recommendation at DOES, they're saying apply to these jobs, but they're not thinking about like my career trajectory or what I would actually do best in.
So you're saying even in some of the organizations that cities have, it still wasn't a human-centered approach, and it was like guiding and steering. And I think that's natural and normal. But I do want to say, like, have you all experienced it on any level? Have you experienced this human-centered approach on any level? It could be now as a professional or not.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things that I've learned is how important mentorship is, and having the right access to the people who do have your best interests at heart. And so I have definitely been blessed with people who get to the heart of my matter and are willing to help me advocate for that and point me in the right direction. So I think now as an adult, I have found that human-centeredness has always existed. Maybe this is just a new term that's being put on it, that people are becoming more aware and like how to embrace the skill set for themselves. And it's not just a select professional few that can take a human-centered model approach.
What do you all believe might be some key, like what is this human-centered? Like what's some of the, important components of this?
I would say it's moving away from the notion that your success is predetermined by a pathway that's been laid out based on whoever's advising you, based on their expertise or their area of comfort. When you talk about being human-centered, you're talking about taking a value system that lies within whoever that person is and kind of fleshing out their true value propositions, what they like to achieve, and finding a pathway or road that connects to it's going to actually have them be happy as well as working and being successful. And so starting from using them as a focal point as opposed to a predetermined system of metrics that says, if you do X, Y, Z, you make this amount of money, not taking into account the fact that they might not be comfortable with X, Y, Z, or money might not be the only motivating factor for success.
Also, as well, is that, well, especially when talking about government organizations, they're used to putting a one-size-fits-all stance on taking on people from all areas, regardless of their backgrounds or any variables that just they haven't considered would impact how their current policy reflects on that particular person. The person from a more stable family, person with existing foundations and roots that they can fall back on if their path faces problems along the way, that they can sort of take a step back and not necessarily lose all their progress all in one go, rather than the person who can be divorced or who can be working part-time or has to be shifting from a full-time to a part-time job. Those different factors heavily influence how a person takes into consideration, okay, now that I'm in this situation in life, I can only make these these decisions. So are there any ways I can circumvent or manage these barriers so that they won't be a factor that I want to be in a better position later down the road, whereas government organizations or the other resources that are out there are very just step one, step two, step three, step four, and no room for interpretation.
So human-centered design doesn't allow us to be rigid. It forces us to be more flexible. And so, so then why don't people do it? Why can't you just wake up every morning and be more human-centered?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that we've built these systems that we're trying to keep moving, but I think we do need to push back against just the way that things have been and really put the person at the forefront. Basically, you have to build a system that is very adjustable, and flexible and responsive to the person.
So I appreciate hearing your voices. You all work in the provider space, and you work very closely with the community, and you work with different populations, all inclusive. And so it sounds like where the success has been, it has been in a human-centered approach. And it sounds like a human-centered approach may be messy in terms of like the sausage making of it, because there's no straight answer, no one straight answer. You know, our job, it sounds like, from your conversation with these voices, and the mission is to bring forth a mandate that as we work with people, regardless of their background, who are trying to get into the labor force, who are trying to improve their employment outlooks, who are trying to, re-enter the world of work, you have to have a human-centered approach in terms of designing the career trajectory that a person would take. It also sounds like you're putting the person at the center of this, and it's that individual who's making the decision about their career. And as a career coach or as a specialist, it sounds like your role is only in bringing tools that help the people you're working with make a decision. Is that a good way of putting that?
Yes, and I would add just working with many different organizations and groups that are advocating. One of the mantras that ring true, no matter what the group is, that when they're advocating for themselves, nothing for us without us. Meaning that voice, they need to have a seat at the table. They need to be included in the decision making. That makes it a lot smoother. That makes it a lot more inclusive. But that truly makes it human-centered.
There is a mandate. We must employ systems of support that are human-centered, where we're placing the individual at the center. As the support mechanism, we're providing tools and resources that will help them make decisions on their behalf. The human-centered approach provides resources where the individual job seeker will then be empowered to make the decisions necessary for their career trajectory. Thank you very much for chiming in today. I'm Cedric Thompson, the Workforce Evangelist, coming to you live with the mission and the mandate. I'll see you for the next episode.